Thank you, everybody. I realized the music stopped, but I just wanted to have an awkward silence, so thanks for bearing with me during that. I want to thank everybody for coming today. The people who have joined us via live stream, it is being live streamed over there. That isn't just for my ego. But I want to thank everybody for coming, for the memorial for Mum, and also for the celebration of Mum. We know if Mum were here right now, she'd look around the room. She'd be unbelievably touched by how many of you were here, and then she'd be tutting her tongue that you are missing work and were you okay to be here? Typical Mum. She wouldn't believe everybody was here for her. She'd be asking, why is everybody here? And we'd have to go, for you, Mum. Way to make it awkward. And on a day like today, we definitely expect some tears. It's emotional. There's going to be sorrow and sadness while we remember Mum. But I hope we find some laughter too. I hope we find time to smile. I hope we find time to joke. Everybody here knew Mum in one way or another. And they knew that Mum loved to joke. She loved a good zinger. She could make a joke. She could certainly take a joke. She had a quick wit. And she loved nothing more than sitting around banter and telling stories and laughing. And if ever there was a gathering, formal or otherwise, and you needed to find Mum, just follow the laughter. When Vicky and I were kids, we could frequently tell who was at a party by listening to who laughed when we heard Mum's laughter. And we'd look and we'd be like, oh, Norma is here. We recognized that because wherever Mum was, laughter was sure to follow. And the only thing I think Mum loved more than to laugh was if she could combine that laughter with some kind of sweet treat, a pastry, a chocolate cake. Last night we had some family come in from out of town, and we all went out for supper. And Jenny told a story, just a funny throwaway, but it really helps define who Mum was. And we went to a restaurant, and Jenny said, "Oh, last time I was here, I came for lunch with Mum. I had the pasta and Mum had dessert." So that kind of encapsulates where Mum was. But we all knew Mum. When I first started writing my notes, that I am deviating from huge. I tried writing Anne, and it didn't feel right. So I went to Mum, but we all knew her as Mum, as Grandma, as a sister. We knew her as a friend, an aunt, a great aunt. She wore a lot of different hats. And it didn't matter what hat she wore. She was always a special person to everybody who knew her. And what made her so special was her uncanny ability to make everybody else feel special. When you talked to Mum, you knew that she was listening. Mum wasn't one of those people where when you conversed with her, she was waiting to say something. She sat there and she genuinely listened to you, and she heard what you had to say. She never made you feel hurried or unimportant. And I remember I called Mum every day on my drive home from work, and I would talk to her, and I couldn't call her after 4 o'clock because Young and Restless were on, but as long as it was before or after then, we were gold. And I'd talk to Mum, and, oh, how was your day? And how's Jenny in the band? And we'd be talking, and she'd be, 4 or 5 minutes, because I'm looking at my Bluetooth clock. And Mum would be like, okay, but I do have to let you go. I've got somebody on the other line. And I was like, oh, okay, that was 5 minutes. If it was me on the other line, I would have hung up on you, Mum. But But that was, she never made you feel hurried. She never answered the phone with, I've got somebody on the other line, so you felt hurried. She always answered the phone to hear what you had to say. You never felt like you were bothering her. If you came and you spoke to Mum, she wanted you to know that you were never a bother, that she wanted you there. And it was never out of obligation. It was out of a genuine interest and love. She had a gift, and I think a lot of people knew this about Mum, of never letting you feel alone. If Mum was there, it didn't matter. You weren't alone. And you could go to Mum with a success, and it didn't matter what that success was. She celebrated with you. She lifted that success up. And if you came to Mum with a sorrow, or if you felt low, she just sat with you and consoled you. She didn't try and fix you. She didn't try and fix it. She let you know it was okay to feel sad and that you weren't alone. And if she was here right now, we know she'd be walking through, hugging everybody. She would pause her own feelings to make sure everybody else felt okay and knew that they were welcomed and loved. And that was just one of the many gifts she had, because she truly did love unconditionally. And one of the best examples of a way to define how Mum loved was when Vicky and I were children. And somebody asked Mum a relatively simple question, and they asked Mum who she loved more. Now, Mum paused before she said me, of course, and the answer she actually said was, I love both my kids the same, but differently. And that was Mum, is she had a huge capacity in her heart and in her soul for love. It was never too full. She welcomed so many people, friends, family. It didn't matter. She was capable of that, but she knew that everybody needed love differently. She would taper how she felt. She didn't expect people to come to her and change how Mum gave love. Mum was just there to give you the love you needed. And it didn't matter if it was a newborn baby or a senior. Mum knew how to care for them. She knew how to be there. And that ties into Mum's sense of loyalty that she had. And Mum had an uncanny ability to pick sides. She was fast. She knew what side she wanted to pick. And she did it unwavering. And I'm not just talking about Newcastle United. There is more to this. I am going to digress to Newcastle United either. I understand there's a Liverpool supporter here, but we're going to let that one slide today. But I am talking about family, and a story I heard recently. I'd heard it before. And when Mum was a child, like a lot of kids, she had a nemesis. And this child, I don't know, let's call her Jennifer Baker. She was pretty mean to Mum, and Mum was told, stand up for yourself, stand up for yourself. And she didn't. She just, no, it's okay. Well, this person one day insulted Mum's baby brother. And before the insult had finished, the nemesis, aka Jennifer Baker, found herself flat on her back. And Mum was standing over her. Mum didn't care what was happening to her, but if you picked a fight with her family, game over. And she maintained that loyalty all through her life, to the point where we have a dear family friend, and they do the morning traffic news. And Mum got to know them quite well, and when Mum put together that our family friend was also this person who did the traffic, Mum would listen to them all the time, to the point where when I called her, she would say, oh, let's call that person Brandy. Brandy wasn't on the news today, why not? And I'd be like, I don't know, I didn't speak to Brandy today. And Mum would be like, well, it was somebody else, and they're not as good. Mum neither drove nor needed to go to work. But this other person wasn't our friend, so how dare they step in there? And that was just, one of those things. Those details didn't matter to Mum. What mattered to Mum were the people that she cared about. And I feel it would be remiss to not mention Mum's strength. When I was greeting some of you, when I went back to the door after I'd abandoned Vicky and went and talked to Ed, who's doing our live stream, a lot of people mentioned Mum's strength and what Mum went through, and she truly was a warrior. She was silent, she was stoic, she was unwavering. It was never about her. Mum had a natural humility, and she couldn't understand things. I went to visit her one time at the hospital. She wasn't doing good. This was a few years ago, and she's sitting there, and she looked quite frail. And I walked in, and Mum looked up and said, "Oh, what are you doing here?" I just happened to be in the area, Mum. Like, what do you think I'm doing here? But that was her first reaction, was, what are you doing here? Not, you should come and visit me. And she had that sincere lack of ego that, a lot of people, we can only hope to emulate that. If you told Mum you were coming to visit, her answer would be, that would be lovely. And that's all she wanted, was people to visit. She wanted to spend time. She wanted to engage. She wanted to talk. And that ties back to when you were there visiting her. You never felt rush. I'd be busy and I'd say, "Oh, I'm going to pop in for half an hour." And an hour and a half later, I'm like, "Oh my God, I am so late." And I'd be off running. And then she'd click her tongue at me like, "You shouldn't be late." And I'd be like, "It's your fault, Mom." But I can get away with saying that now. I'm going to get a lot of things out here. So, but Mum gave her love freely. She didn't expect anything at all. She had no expectations of anybody, and she accepted everything. Didn't matter what you brought, Mum. She accepted it, and she accepted everybody for who they were. She had a deep sense of morals and ethics. She worked hard. She never complained. To the point where, even just a few weeks ago, she was quite sick, and she said something, and then she immediately followed it up with, "Oh, listen to me complaining." And it's like, I think you're allowed to now, Ma? Like, maybe give yourself a break. But she was a beautiful contradiction. She was strong and tough, but tender and gentle. She had no problem saying what was what. But she would do so by letting you know it didn't come from a place of anger or hurt. She'd follow it up with a hug, with that kindness that she just emanated. She was humble, but she wasn't timid. If anybody ever heard Mum's razor-sharp wit, timid was not a word you would use to describe Mum. She was fierce, but she was warm. She was never scary. You were never scared. Well, I was going to say never scared of Mum. A lot of you didn't know her the way I did when I was 7. That might be a little different. But as I got older, I wasn't scared because I learned to run faster. But it was how she was. She was strict but loving. It was never a sense of like, "Oh no, I'm scared." I'm scared because I don't want to be in trouble, but I was never scared of Mum. She was open and giving, but she was nobody's fool. She had a deep sense of right and wrong, yet she never judged anybody. Mum never looked, if you made a mistake, no problem. We all make mistakes, let's just move on. And that was how she was. She was quick to forgive. She embodied the best characteristics of knowing how to live, and she never felt the need to preach that to others. She accepted everybody for who they were, and she never once said, "Well, this is how I do it." She led by example. And she was an example to a lot of people. I've heard from a number of people who aren't here today, so I can really, talk trash about them. Oh, I forgot Ed's recording it. But the amount of people that have come up to me that only knew Mum either through me or through Vicky or in the briefest of circumstances, who've spoken about how much she meant to them. And I remember once we were having an occasion at my work, and Mum and Vicky came, and at the end of the day, I couldn't find them, but we also couldn't find one of the owners of Golden Acre, and we didn't put it together, and we couldn't find them. And 40 minutes later, I find Mum and Vic's. Well, Alfredo had ran into them, and they'd spent 40 minutes just chatting and catching up. And Alfredo loved Mum. He would go down and find her if she was in the store. And he only knew her through me, but that was the impact that she had. So with that, I do want to say one of Mum's family members, one of her siblings, couldn't be here today. Teresa, and she's deeply missed, absolutely, and I know Teresa would have loved to have been here. And we asked Teresa if she would like to send something along, and Teresa kept it very simple, and what she said was, "Anne, when you meet God, can you thank him for giving me the best older sister I could have ever wished for?" And I think that's absolutely beautiful. It's such a summation of Mum, because we can replace that sister with friend, with Mum, with grandma, with aunt, and I think we all feel the same way, that she was the best of that. So with that message from Terry, I would like to pass it on now to Mum's other two siblings, Peter and Judy. They're the two who were in from out of town, and I'm going to allow them to say a few words.
Morning. Colin, that was beautifully spoken, yeah, which astonished me. But it causes us a problem, because now, how do you follow that? But no, that was much appreciated, thank you. You've now got the ad-libbers. We've prepared nothing by way of notes. I will not trust any information technology whatsoever ever again. So we're going to try and maybe enrich a little bit of that picture that Colin's painted with some thoughts and a couple of little cameo memories that we always welcome into our minds when we think of Anne. Colin mentioned in covering every single attribute with every single word, you mentioned words like warrior and fighter several times, and it might be a little bit of a surprise to some of you to know that my sister followed in the footsteps of her father, in that he was bravely taking part in activities in World War II, and his father took part in activities in World War I. And Anne herself actually joined the army. Yes, she did. Now, in England, we have in the armed forces a thing called a short service commission. Yeah. And Anne took this slightly to extremes. Was it 4 days?
A little longer than that.
4 days.
A few weeks.
It was such a heart-rending thing, because against my dad's best advice, she signed up, buggered off to training camp. And one of the things they allowed you to do back then was, if you were a new recruit going into the army training camp, was to keep in touch with home a little bit while they toughed you up and made you into what they wanted you to be. And one of the ways they did this was to allow you to make a little recording. And through the post, about 3 days after she arrived at training camp, arrived a little 45 record with Anne's thoughts of how things were going.
Crying.
Yeah. So
I want to come home.
I imagine most families would get a message about how exciting it was, how bad the food was, all the equipment they had to learn, the pain of the drill exercise. We got 32 seconds of tears, and sobbing, saying she wanted to come home.
And she was always hungry.
Yeah, they had no cake whatsoever. But they let her go, I think, realising that it was best done out of pity rather than having a shot at dawn for deserting. But the point of that story is, again, backing up something Colin said, was there was nothing more important than family. And to take her out of the family context and put her into something with strangers, however nice they might have been, was not something she would work with. It just wasn't Anne. And the other thought that sprang to mind is that Anne was part of our family, a linchpin in many ways, especially for us siblings. And by the way, we're speaking for Teresa as well today. There's 3 of us here spiritually, 2 of us in body. But the other thing Anne was the other half of a single entity called Anne and Sid. You never said the word Anne
Right.
after a certain point in time unless there was something to follow it. And that was generally a Sid. There are lots of Annes in our family, and you might have followed the first Anne with a Joe.
No,
Hello,
Annie and Pat.
Yeah, but there's a little story that goes around that about early on in the courtship, which I always find absolutely fascinating, and talking about heroics and valour. That there's no higher commendation for the medal that Sid should have had. When, if you go back to 1966 and consider that my father was, shall we say, slightly conservative, not in a political sense, just in his views of how the world ought to be and how people ought to look and how they ought to behave. He probably spent most of the 60s using words like long-haired lout, getting their bloody hair cut. So, in 1966, up turns the important moment where Anne reveals what the cat has dragged in, and decides to reveal to her loving father the love of her life and the man she's going to spend the rest of her life with. Up turns Sid, James Dean look-alike, plenty of Brill cream on that wonderful quiff, a t-shirt, a leather jacket, a pair of jeans, and a motorbike, for God's sake. A motorbike. So my dad completed his assessment very quickly and gave his full report, which was, "You're not getting on the back of that bloody thing." Consider this, the guy is a rocker. He's got a BSA motorbike, or a Norton, or whatever it was, and he's in a certain genre. You're there, aren't you? In the young years, you are what you are and what you want to be in emulating heroes. And Sid loved Anne so much that he traded his bike and his whole life and sense of worth for the only other thing he could drive on his motorcycle license, which is the most appalling vehicle the United Kingdom has ever produced. It's got 3 wheels, it's made of plastic, and it comes to bits. So that was
The Reliant Robin.
A Reliant Robin. Don't ever get one. Don't. I think my dad was moved by that. He was touched by that, and years later,
Until
they had a very close relationship. My dad thought the world of Sid, but Sid obviously thought the world of Anne too. And the postscript of the story was, having gone down the safety route instead of the James Dean route, which has its own interesting connotation there. But Sid was allowed to take Anne out in this 3-wheeled hell trap, but forgot he was riding a car instead of a motorbike, and took that traffic circle at just the wrong speed, rolled the car and demolished it, and was still forgiven for it. But yeah, the notion that Anne was nothing if not part of a family is what I see as a huge part of what she was. But she was also the other half of, I think Anne said, we'll be back again later today. Sorry, my voice gave out a bit there. Robin, perhaps you could introduce someone who could speak. Thank you.
Great job.
Well, you started that by saying you didn't know how you were going to follow me, and now I feel the same. I guess we're just going to spend the rest of the day one-upping each other. So,
professional eulogist.
Yeah. And those amazing words, especially about Dad, because that is where Mum's heart was with Sid, with my dad, always, even after he'd passed and they'd been apart for that long. And I want to touch on as well something that Judy said to me yesterday, and it hit home because it made a lot of sense to me, was that we'll all remember something about Anne. We'll remember a story, we'll remember a time we saw her, we'll remember 32 seconds of crying on a record. But eventually those memories might fade, but what won't fade is the fact that we know how Anne made us feel. And words and memories and whatnot can diminish, but that sense of feeling, it won't. And that's something that Mum was, is that she was a linchpin to the family. She knew all of the stories of everybody, including my dad's family, because they really were a pair, and she learned all of his extended family and all of the stories. And Mum just loved to share them. She was always so proud to tell a story from either the Keenan side or the Hayles side and share it to whoever would listen. And it was amazing. And now I'd like to introduce my beautiful wife and Mum's beautiful daughter-in-law, Jenny.
Hello, everyone. I just want to thank everyone for being here, from sitting in the front seat here. I really haven't had a chance to look around and see just how many faces are out there. And can everybody hear me okay? Pretty soft-spoken. Okay. So I met Mom in the fall of 2013. So Sid had passed away the year before, and unfortunately I didn't have a chance to meet Sid. Fortunately, I did get to meet Anne and Vicky, and I know that Mom was concerned, as I have, I was a single mom, and had a little boy who was 6 years old, and she still hadn't met this woman that Colin was going on dates with, because we were kind of taking our time. I had recently decided to start dating again, and there was Colin. And that was it. We celebrated our 8th anniversary last August, so I've known Mom and Vicky for 10 years. I called her Mom pretty quickly into the relationship because we bonded very quickly. Part of that due, I think, to Harry, my son, who gave Anne a grandson. And she absolutely adored him. He was her golden child and could do no wrong. When I was like, my face would turn red at the dinner table because he would just be Harry and be himself, but she loved that the most about him. And Harry loved profiteroles that she served for dessert, so she started stocking them in the house on a regular basis, profiteroles. And Harry would just walk in and walk to the refrigerator and help himself to profiteroles. Something similar happened when we got our dog. Every time Jimmy came over, he would lay at Anne's feet and keep them warm, and he adored her. He thought he should have a place at the table. He wasn't given that, but he was removed from a dining chair once when he got dinner Christmas dinner or Thanksgiving dinner was meant for him as well. But instead she had bones in the cupboard, and every time Jimmy came over, he knew which side his bread was buttered on and would go straight to Mom. So I wrote a few things down. I don't know if I'm going to follow it or not, but I'll do my best. Mom had a light, and I remember during COVID, and when things were really difficult for a lot of people, and a lot of people were depressed and struggling, there was, somebody wrote something about look for the glimmers, and that's exactly what Anne was. She had that light and that glimmer that was bright enough to illuminate even the darkest days. And due to our regulations and guidelines, during that time, Anne could have one cohort. And at that time I wasn't working, so I was lucky enough to be that person who was her cohort. And I figured that it would be somebody who would go into her house and make her lunch and keep her company and have some tea. And you know, I was embracing this role. I thought it would be great. You know, it's not quite how it worked out. We did have the tea, and we did have chinwags for hours. And however, I wasn't allowed to touch a dish. In fact, I believe she was on the phone with Teresa, and I snuck into the kitchen to wash a few dishes and just tidy up after snacking and having tea all day long. And she, while she was on the phone, she gave me the eye. And then some motions while continuing a conversation. And basically I just had to put down the brush that I was washing the dishes with and walk away for fear of what might come after the silent admonishment that I was getting. Her greatest pride and joy were in her family, absolutely. She talked about her siblings, she talked about her children, and she talked about her grandson. And she always wanted to know how my extended family was. And everybody's children were beautiful. She absolutely adored children. And one evening when Harry was performing at the Jack Singer, which is a rather, how should we say it, fancy, I guess, establishment for performances. This little wee boy who had just returned from Australia got up on stage and dedicated a song to his grandmother. And everybody was looking around wanting to see who this woman was, and you know, there was almost a light emanating from her because the beams of pride were coming out that her little grandson would do this. And they say that powerful people make powerful children, and that is true. Sid and Anne raised Vicky and Colin to be the utmost loving and generous people that I know, in both spirit and in time and in gratitude and true love. That means that they will stand beside you. They won't carry you, they'll hold your hand, but that's what Mom was to me. If I needed a little bit of advice on parenting as Harry got a little bit older, she was there to tell stories about Colin, to make me laugh and realize that I really didn't have it that bad at all, actually. And that really I shouldn't be whinging, actually, at all. And we talked about my grandma, who happened to be a Geordie as well. She grew up in South Shields, which is a part of, I guess, an extension of Newcastle upon Tyne, but not so far away that it was Sunderland. Sorry, we'll just move on from that quickly. Anyway, South Shields was acceptable, I found out. So some of the Geordie-isms or euphemisms or colloquial terms I had grown up with, and we were talking about accents one day, and I said, I actually find the Newcastle accent quite neutral, and she's like, that's because you grew up with it. And that was Mom sharp as a tack. She knew that before even, you know, before I even knew it. And you know, if there were dark days, and she was always there to make me laugh, and it wasn't at the expense of somebody else. It was usually at the expense of herself, actually, because that was Mom. She didn't mind taking one for the team. I have some anecdotes here. So I talked about Harry and the preferred roles. We can cross that one off the list. But I feel lucky to have spent time with her in the last 10 years when phone calls turned not just into, thank you, not just for the both of us, but for me directly, and emails and visits soon. They would take Harry, Vicky and Mom would take Harry overnight. So Colin and I, she knew the importance of a strong marriage, and so Colin and I could have our time together. And I couldn't be more grateful to Mom. She was an amazing human being who just extended her love to her family and beyond. And I did find a quote, one short one that stood out to me, because I feel like it embodies who she was to me. A mother gives you life, and a mother-in-law gives you her life. And that is what she did. So thank you very much, everybody, for being here today.
Thanks, Jenny. And that was Mum. She absolutely opened her house and heart to Jenny and Harry from the first time we met them. The actual first time we had a pumpkin carving contest, and Mum was the judge, and Vicky, myself, Jenny, and Harry all carved a pumpkin. And Mum judged Harry as the winner. His was terrible. Okay, he was 7. He didn't know what he was doing. It was hacked to bits. It was mine was fantastic, but no, Harry had to win. But Mum genuinely opened it up, and you know, that time when Harry walked in and would just help himself, and Jenny would be like, oh my gosh, and Mum would just laugh and made him, you know, just feel at home. That was where he was most welcome at any time. And speaking of, Harry has a few things he'd like to say about his grandma.
Hello, everybody. So Anne, my grandma, she was a joy. She taught me that love beats anything. I could go over there having a not so great day or not being in a good mood, and I would go there and it would just instantly go away. It was just love. And I couldn't leave her house without her slipping me a 20. I'm incredibly grateful for the memories I got to have, and I got to have the best grandma I could ever wish for, so thank you all for being here, and she warmed my heart, and I think she warmed everybody's heart. So.
He never split that 20 with anybody, by the way. Just want to, I was the one who drove him there, my gas, but no, by all means, give Harry the 20.
You're not scarred, though.
Yeah, no, I hold no resentment against that at all. I have a running tab on my phone, but we'll get to that later. Now, I just want to draw everybody's attention to the monitors. Vicky prepared a slideshow, and it is going to capture, it did capture every essence of Mum's life. I'm only going to be paying attention to the slides that include me, but no, it was a beautiful tribute, and I hope you all get a chance to enjoy it. So whichever monitor is closer, whichever one you see better, if we'll all just take a moment and watch the monitors. Thank you.
Come let me love you. Come love me like the mountains in springtime, like the walk in the rain, like a storm in the desert, like the sweet deep blue ocean. You fill up my senses, come fill me
I see trees of green, red roses too. I see them blue for me and you. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. I see skies of blue and clouds of white, the bright blessed day, the dark sacred night. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. The colors of the rainbow, so pretty in the sky, are also on the faces of people going by. I see friends shaking hands, saying how they do. They're really saying, I love you. I hear babies cry. I watch them grow. They're like much more than I never knew. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. Yes, I think to myself, what a wonderful world.
almost heaven, southbound London, Rocky Mountains, lazy rolling like the old man, older than the trees, younger than mountains, rolling like a breeze, happy roads, take me home to the place I belong. With Victoria, condo mama, me drown in your laughter. Let me die in your arms. Let me lay down beside you. Let me always be with you. Come, let me love you. Come, love me you fill up my senses. Come fill me
Took the supermarket flash from the windowsill. Threw the day-old tea from the cup. Packed up the photo album that you had made. Memories of a life that's been loved. Took the get well SIM cards and stuffed animals. Put the old ginger beer down the sink. Dad always told me, don't you cry when you're down. But Mum, there's a tear every time.
I just want to say there were some pictures there that we were only brave enough to put when Mum wasn't here. We're brave, not stupid. I, again, would like to thank everybody for coming. That's going to wrap up the memorial part. Outside, we have some refreshments, tea, coffee, sandwiches, and whatnot. Please feel free to mingle, share some stories, hugs, whatever. And again, thank you for everybody, family, friends, and everybody who could attend, and of course, everybody who attended on the live stream who couldn't be here. Like Peter mentioned, you are definitely here in spirit. Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Well done, Corey.
Please stand.
Memories of a life that's been lost. Took the get well SIM cards and stuffed animals. Put the old ginger beer down the sink. Dad always told me, don't you cry when you're down. But Mum, there's a tear every time
pillows, made the bed, stacked the chairs, folded your nightgowns neatly in a cake. John said he tried, then put his hand on my cheek and wiped a tear from the side.